Shalom and happy Sunday. We have been spending a lot of time thinking about deliverance and how we get our deliverance. And, you know, there are so many teachings about how to kick out demons and what the steps you need to accomplish and the things that you need to do to kick out demons. And everybody has, all the different ministries have these different thoughts and different ideas about how to kick out demons. And so we were looking at that and we were thinking, okay, what is the simplicity of it? And why does it seem like sometimes it's really hard for people to get deliverance?
Yeah. And then, you know, there's also things that come along with deliverance that distract you and make you feel that you can't do it. So we want to talk about some of those as well.
Right. And I'm purposely wearing this shirt today that says, I'm a zombie. But then the bottom part says, dead to sin, alive to Christ. And I'm purposely wearing this shirt because it kind of says what I want to say. Is like, when the demon's taken over your body, you kind of act like a zombie in many ways. And when you think about like the zombie movies that people made, the bodies are being animated, but the person isn't really there anymore.
Yeah.
And we were reading last night, we were reading this book from Lester Sumrall, Demons, the Answer book. And one of the things that was in the book, he was telling this story about how he'd gone to this prison to set this woman free from a demon affliction. And he'd been highly motivated by her story because they had this story in the newspaper for weeks. And we're talking about how this phenomenon was happening of this woman that was getting bit, and they thought that she was psychotic and she was biting herself. But then they were watching her and they had people like surrounding her and paying attention to her to make sure that she couldn't bite herself. And they found that through this time that they were watching her, they found that these bite marks would show up on her, and they even had saliva on the bite marks and in places on her body that there was no way she could have bit herself.
Yeah.
And so Lester Sumrall was listening to this story in the news, and he was moved by this fact, and he said, that's not a human thing, that is a demon. Mm-hmm. And so in his story, he says how he argued with Yahweh all night about wanting him to deliver this woman from the demon. And in the morning time, then Yahweh says to him, if you will go and tell her about me, I will cast out the demon. And so then he got all scared, like, oh, no, I don't want to go. I want you just to kick out the demon. And that was one of, like, that starting point is one of the, like, valuable points to me, is that a lot of times we ask Yahweh to do something, but we're not willing to step out in faith and do it ourselves.
That's right.
And we have our reasons, right? We're intimidated, we're scared, we don't want to look foolish, blah, 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 right? But when there is no other solution but Yahweh, and you look like you must be the crazy person in the bunch, right?
Yep.
That's when Yahweh shows up.
Yes.
That's when the most spectacular things happen. And, like, it makes me think of the story of Elijah when he addresses the 500 prophets of Baal. Mm-hmm. And he's one guy. And he shows up and he's like, let me tell you about my God. Yep. Because mine is way better than yours. And he's got this, like, sarcastic attitude about him. And if you read the humor into the scripture, you will see the humor. Like, you've got one prophet who's standing against 500 prophets. Yeah. And he's literally taunting them.
Yeah. My favorite line in that is, maybe your God's on the toilet.
I know, right?
Dropping a deuce or something.
It's hilarious. Like, you gotta read read the scripture and when you're reading the scripture, understand what the words are saying, so you can comprehend the fullness of the story. This was a duel that he created between him and the other prophets of Baal, which they're false prophets. They're not real prophets. They're false prophets because they're worshiping a idol. They're worshiping a demon god. And I mean, Baal shows up multiple times throughout the scripture with different names. So, but I don't want to get into a long teaching about that. That's not my point. My point is, like, the end of that story of Elijah is that the false prophets, the Baal worshippers, they spend like half the day or 3/4 of the day trying to get their God to answer them.
Yes.
By beating themselves, by screaming, by yelling, by dancing. Like, who knows? They were probably even sacrificing people because that was part of Baal worship. We don't have the fullness of that story, but they spent a good majority of the day and nothing happened.
Yeah.
And then Elijah comes on the scene. He sets up his altar and he's extravagant. He makes the altar, he digs a moat around it. He has the people, and he doesn't do all the work. He makes the people do the work, which is hilarious to me. And he gets them to pour buckets and buckets and buckets of water over the top of his offering. So much so that he fills a moat around the altar of water, and it's the middle of a drought. Yeah. These people had to have been very upset with him for dumping all their water on the ground.
Yeah, and then multiple times, because he doesn't even do it like 3 or 4 times, or 2 times at least.
Yeah, where he's dousing the altar. Yeah. This totally had to frustrate these people, right? But then he says one sentence and calls down fire from heaven. He basically says, and this is Charity's paraphrasing, you can go read his exact words, but he basically says, Yahweh, here's your offering, please take it.
And then fire comes down from heaven.
And fire rains down from heaven, right? And it consumes the entire altar, the offering, the altar itself, and laps up all the water around it. Even the rocks are incinerated.
Yeah, that's great. That is outstanding.
If you know anything about science, you have to know that that's quite the fire to incinerate the rocks.
Yes, it is.
That's a whole lot of fire. And it's one sentence. He doesn't spend all afternoon, all the rest of the day calling down his God.
No, he doesn't.
He does one thing. He does one thing. He sets it up the way it's supposed to be, and then he says one sentence to call his Yahweh. And that's the point I want to make, is a lot of times in deliverance ministry, people are spending an awful lot of time talking.
Yeah. Calling
to their God, calling out for it to work. And it kind of looks a lot like the Baal worship in this story. Is they're begging and they're pleading for their God to show up.
Yep.
Instead of declaring like Elijah did, here's your offering, come take it.
Yes.
Right? Instead of saying, I've done it, now it's your turn. Right? And making it plain, making it blunt, making it out there. And it's not a begging and it's not a pleading.
Yeah, because the demons will hear that in your voice. I mean, they can see into a realm that we can't see. So what they see is going to be more true to what is actually going on than what we see in the physical realm.
Exactly.
Because we're only seeing 16% or 1/6 of this realm. And in the actual other realms, without we've got like a filter in it. So in the what we call the spiritual realm, you can see everything.
Right.
You're not locked into just 1/6 or 16% of the visible light.
Right. So they can see what's happening in their part of the world and in our part of the world at the exact same time.
Yes.
And we're only seeing the physical manifestation in the bodies.
That's right. That's correct.
And so we're making our judgments and our assessments based on the physical things that we're seeing.
Yes.
But you're actually kind of looking at the zombie.
Yeah. And that's why, my first time administering deliverance, it was a complete failure, and the demon completely mocked me. It was, I was like, I cast it out, and then the demon started saying, demon go, and just mocking me, and I'm like, what's going on here, and then the demon started laughing at me. And this was a woman that was completely, she couldn't speak. So she had complete dementia and couldn't speak, hardly could say a few words, and this demon is just rattling off sentences just to mock me.
Which is a great clue, right?
Yes.
And that's one of the things that Lester Sumrall was saying in his book, is after the woman was actually delivered, once he got her delivered, he discovered she didn't speak English. He was in the Philippines, and she didn't understand a single thing he was saying. But when she had first walked in to the little chapel that they had set up at the prison for her to be able to come into to talk to him, she was speaking perfect English. And wasn't really disturbed by any of the other people that she walked past. But when she got to Lester Sumrall, instantly she said in English, "I don't like you." Right?
Yeah, that's not the girl speaking.
That's not the girl speaking, that's the demon speaking.
Yes.
And this is one of the things that we have to pay attention to, is when somebody starts doing something that everyone has said they can't do, then you know that there's definitely something possessing that body.
Yes.
There's something controlling that body in that moment, because if they can't speak that language, then how are they talking to in English?
Yeah.
That has to be a demon that's working through them.
Yep.
If they, and don't confuse what I'm saying with the manifestations of the Ruach Hakodesh, because it's another topic, and there's things that the devil will mimic and mock of Yahweh's and make it try to look like you're doing something that's demonic, but it's actually the Ruach Hakodesh. That's another video. We'll talk about that another time. But I'm specifically talking about the demon manifestations. And so when you're looking at these things, we have to pay attention to what's happening. We have to keep our own head on our shoulders. As they say, keep your head screwed on.
Yes.
In the situation, because the demons are going to try to distract you.
And that's a good point. I mean, that's why Yahshua said, shut up to all the demons.
Exactly.
Because he didn't want them mocking him and giving, and the apostles would lose faith.
Exactly, right? Mocking them and causing a stir, right?
Yeah.
Because we were talking about this distraction, right? So when you go, first of all, you have to decide, I have the relationship with Yahshua. I have the power within me. Get rid of your sacred cows that would say that you don't have the authority to kick out the demon. Because if you have Yahshua in you, you have the Ruach Hakodesh in you, you have the authority, the ability, and the power to go kick out any demon.
That's right.
Any single one of them. Because you are seated far above all powers, all principalities, all evil, wicked beings, even the devil himself. You are seated above them with Yahshua himself at the right hand of the Father. You're seated with Yahweh. So you have the same authority he does. And if we understood the depth of the power that we have coming through our voice, because it's all about our authority, then we wouldn't question whether or not we could kick out the demon. Because it's not a question of whether you can. It's a question of whether you will.
Yes.
And because you have the ability to, and you have the power to, because of who lives on the inside of you, not because of you in and of yourself.
That's correct.
And that's a really important lesson for us to understand and remember. Number one is relationship is the most important thing. Mm-hmm. And even if you're deceived by the names, right, is relationship is the most important thing. Because sometimes in our life we haven't yet been revealed what are the true names of Yahweh? And we had this discussion this week too, is that before the names of Yahweh were fully revealed to me, I thought that the English words that were in my Bible were the names of my God.
Yes.
And I was completely and absolutely convinced that God, capital G, meant Yahweh. But I didn't know the name of Yahweh.
Yeah.
And I was convinced that the name Jesus Christ was Yahshua HaMashiach, or Yahoshua HaMashiach. And I didn't know, Yahoshua HaMashiach was his natural name that he would have been given when he was walking around on the earth. And so I got results by using the name Jesus Christ because I had a relationship with Yahoshua HaMashiach. And I just didn't have that piece of knowledge yet that gave me the revelation of what his real name was. And so the reason I'm saying that is because you can get results with the wrong name if you have the right relationship.
That's right.
But you're going to get better results with the right relationship and the right name. And the reason you get better results isn't because Yahweh loves you more. The reason is because then the demons and the fallen angels have no choice but to listen to you. Because they can't say, oh, well, I didn't know who you were talking about. Because you use the name that is above every other name.
Yeah, that's a good point, because if we're telling demons that God said or Jesus said to get out, well, those aren't names of Yahweh or Yahshua. Those are our distraction names. God actually goes back to Baal, and Yahshua goes back to Jesus, which is Hail Zeus. It's not a direct translation of Jesus.
Right.
Or Yahshua. Now I'm messing it up.
Right. Jesus is not a direct translation of Yahshua.
It's not.
And it's not a direct translation of Yahoshua either.
It is not. I mean, we even asked our Arabic friend if it was, because Aramaic is very close to Arabic, what was the translation of Joshua? And it came back to Yahshua, which is pretty close to the English or the Hebrew pronunciation of Yahshua. Yahoshua.
Right. So the O kind of makes this long O sound. It's like Yahushua.
Yeah.
And which is, so if they would have translated it to Joshua, that would have been a much closer translation.
Oh, absolutely, much closer. But
for the English name of the Hebrew name that they probably would have called him.
Yeah.
And we'll do another video on that so we can just talk about the names. But, you know, like it appears as if the name that the messenger Michael gave to Mary when he showed up to tell her that she was going to carry the son of Yahweh, that the name he used was Yahshua. YAH space SHUA, and which meant Yah's salvation, or the salvation of Yahweh, or salvation of Yah. And so, depending on how he said it, like the Hebrew translation into a name would have been Yahoshua, because the name Yahoshua meant the salvation of God, which would be the salvation of Yahweh, because their God was Yahweh. And so that's why you hear the two different sounds, is because Yahoshua was probably what most people called him, because that would be the name that they would know, like a person's name they would know, that meant God's salvation, or salvation is of God. And for them, because well, let's not get into a whole discussion on that right now. But that's why you hear two different names, because the angel probably said Yahshua, and because he's going to say it the right way, because he's coming directly from Yahweh. He's going to say what Yahweh said, because that's their job. They have to do exactly what Yahweh is telling them to do. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because so do the demons. So do the fallen angels. They have to do what Yahweh says, because he is the ultimate authority in heaven and in earth. And no matter what realm you're in, no matter what kingdom you're in, no matter how you look at the worlds or realms or orderly arrangements, whatever words you're using, these beings that we don't see have to respond to Yahweh. They don't have a choice. He made them. They have to respond. So when he talks to them directly, they have to come. They have to do what he said. And you can see that in the book of Job. When Yahweh called the devil to come talk to him, at the very beginning of the book of Job, the devil himself has to show up. So if you look at the fallen world, the fallen realm of the fallen angels and the demons and the principalities and powers and things, fallen things, when you look at those fallen things, everybody equates the devil to being the highest one, right?
Yeah.
Is they say, well, he, Halil himself, or Lucifer, or the devil, or Satan, whatever word you call him, is the highest of all of the fallen beings. Well, if that's the case, and he has to show up when Yahweh calls him, then so do all the rest of them.
Yeah.
Because they work in a hierarchy. It's absolutely a hierarchy. And that's what we need to hear and understand in it, is it's a hierarchy. They follow a hierarchy. And so that's the reason why I care about the name. Because if they're following a hierarchy and they're responding to their highest authority of Halil, when you use a name that's above that, that's so high up, you're seated so far above them that they can't even understand how high you are. You're way outside their rank, and you use that name, and that's the name that you're coming under the authority of in that situation. They have to listen.
That's a good point, because the Zeus name, Zeus essentially, does not have a higher authority than Yahweh.
Exactly. And that's why we're so adamant about the names, is because if you're using the wrong name, you're not using the power of the name.
In fact, it's a false god that is below any deity, per se, any fallen angel.
Right.
It's not even, doesn't even register. It wasn't something Yahweh created, it was something man created.
Right. And we get results because, like I said, we have relationship with the one we think is behind that name.
Yes.
But because who is enacting the things that we're saying are the fallen angels or the light angels, right? They're the ones that are listening to us. You're not physically grabbing a hold of somebody and pulling a demon out of them. There's a light angel that is next to you that is pushing that darkness out of that person. So to me, I think of like a cartoon, right? Of having a white ghost coming and a dark ghost coming, and the white ghost is overcoming that dark ghost, right?
Yep.
Or, having a fallen angels that look like these dark shadow beings all the way around the person, and then you have light shadow beings around from the other side, and you're overcoming the darkness with the light.
But it could also be Yahshua himself showing up.
Yes.
Like he showed up as you with the blood-dripping sash that you said was the most terrifying thing.
And see, I think that happens when we got the right name. And I can't prove that. I don't have any way to prove that. But I think that happens when we got the right name. Because when we got the right name, we get instantaneous results. And wouldn't you get instantaneous results if the one who conquered death and hell and the devil himself showed up?
Yeah, and we were watching that pastor the other day that said the name that you call upon is the name that you invoke.
Yeah. Did you hear that? The name you call upon is the name you invoke. And, right, this is so important because invoking refers to the demonic world.
Mm-hmm.
Almost always.
Yep.
It's almost always used in witchcraft. So if I'm invoking something, I'm probably not calling on the highest authority in the light realm, right?
Yeah.
I might be calling on the highest authority in the dark realm, but not in the light realm. But if I'm calling, the words that Yahoshua used were about calling on his Father and talking to his Father, having a conversation with him, brought together as one with him, right? If you're doing that, you're going to get Yahweh results, not the devil results. You're going to get Yahweh results. Is the thing that's so unbelievably powerful is this fact that the enemy can see the fullness of him, and yet they still kind of stick around, and they're still fighting, and they're still doing these things, and so, like, that was the conversation in relation to deliverance. Is if the enemy is not going, then they're not seeing that Yahshua.
Yeah.
They're not seeing that Yahshua. What's coming out of you isn't that fullness of that Yahshua. And actually, this is a revelation I'm getting right at the moment, is we're bringing something to the table that is a watered down version of Yahshua. Mm-hmm. That isn't the full Yahshua in all of what people want to say, in all of his glory, which would be all of his light, all of his reverence, all of the fullness of who he is. We're not bringing that Yahshua to the table because we don't know him. We're not using the name. Whatever the situation is, he's not being presented. Mm-hmm. And when he's presented, those demons have no choice but to instantaneously flee. And so when you see those instant miracles, it's because that's the Yahshua that showed up. Mm-hmm. Because that's the name that you actually used in that moment. You brought that presence of him forward. And the demons knew they had no choice. They could not stick around because he's that terrifying to them. His authority is that high, his power is that high, that they can't. They have no way to resist that. Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. Awesome. And that's another reason, when we think about that, that's another reason to use his name.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, because you're calling out to Yahshua, mm-hmm. not some variation of Zeus.
Exactly.
Or if you put a J in front of it, Zeus. I don't know where the J came from, but it was like 500, 800 years ago that they inserted it because supposedly the I was too overworked in Greek or English.
Which seems a little bizarre to me.
It seems very bizarre. It's probably not the truth. I'm sure there's some other reason why they inserted the J, probably to get it further away from the Y, because Hebrew uses Y. So the farther away that they can get from the Y sound would be more of a reason.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good reason to me. Because if you're not making the sound of Yahweh and the things in Yahweh's realm, you're not going to get the results of Yahweh's realm.
You're not.
If you want the results of Yahweh's realm, you have to sound like Yahweh. Because everything was created and everything exists because he spoke it into existence.
That scripture comes to mind, and I think it's Matthew, where it says, Yahshua said, if you ask your father for a loaf of bread, he's not going to give you a stone. Uh-huh. But if our words are wrong, we're asking for a stone and expecting a loaf of bread.
Right. Which is really funny, right? Yeah. That's really hilarious.
Yes.
And we don't even realize we're doing it.
We don't.
Most of the time, we don't even realize we're doing it because we don't understand how the words have been changed.
Yeah, we do not. And we see that in the dictionaries, too. We got a 1962 dictionary, and the things that dictionary says are different than the things of the current dictionary. Uh-huh. And people will say, oh, well, meanings change, but meanings don't change. The reason the word was created is there's a reason why that word was created for something that was happening at that time. Mm-hmm. If we change the word and the meaning, we're not going to get the fullness of that meaning.
Of why it was created in the first place.
Yes. So it'd be like if one was created to represent one, and now we 1-2, we're going to be expecting to get, somebody will be expecting to get 1 for 1, and somebody expecting to get 2 for 1.
Right.
That's just a lot of confusion. And, you know, the truth is the same for everyone, everywhere, all the time. So not only numbers can't change, but word meanings can't change. If they do, they're no longer true. And, you know, if they're changing over time, it may be because they want to distort what they want us to believe something that isn't true.
Right, right.
Yeah, and we see that in the world of idols and gods, because what was the Greek gods were actually older gods that they just changed the name of to fit into the new time. And we know that because the worship never changed. The way that idols were worshipped in the Bible is the way that they're worshipped now today, which is human sacrifice. It's illicit sex, and, you know, other things that I'm not going to go in right now. But
Yeah, there's the whole point of idol worship, of idolatry, is to get the worship off of Yahweh.
that's right.
That's the whole point of it. That's what the devil's trying to do, is he's trying to get you to stop focusing on Yahweh and to focus on him. And so by changing all these different names and all these different words, he's getting our focus off of Yahweh and off of the purity of who Yahweh is, because that purity is what is going to bring us into the full presence of Yahweh.
That's right.
And because this whole conversation was about demons, it's also what keeps our focus off of getting the demons out.
Yeah.
Because now we've watered down the message. We've watered down the truth of who Yahoshua is. And so we go into these situations like Lester Sumrall did, not realizing the full power that is behind him.
That's right.
So for him, it took him 2 days to kick this demon out. Or 2 demons out. And it's a mixed bag, because it allows us to see different things in there, right? He had a relationship with Yahshua, but he had the wrong name. He had a desire to kick out the demon, but he wasn't fully confident that he could do it.
That's why it took 2 days.
Why it took him 2 days. And we know that because he said he had to call it a day at like half the day on the first day, and he had to go home and fast and pray and call 2 of his friends to come and help him. So that means he was missing some confidence in himself to be able to do this. And maybe there were some sacred cows he had to overcome yet. But the whole purpose of fasting and praying is to get our focus off of the world and onto Yahweh. Get our focus off ourselves, off the world, and get it back onto Yahweh. Because the fasting and praying was not calling Yahweh into the situation. It was getting his flesh out of the way.
Yeah.
So he could do the job that was set before him to do. And then when he goes back the second day, he does something different the second day. Instead of being distracted by all the people that were watching him, because it was a crowd full of people, and being distracted by what the demons were doing, he made everybody take a knee. He made everybody kneel down in the presence of Yahweh, and he had his 2 pastor friends stand between him and the crowd, so that he wasn't being distracted by what they were doing. It was creating a block or a barrier between his eyesight of what he was looking at and the people that could be affected by the demons. Because we don't always realize that there's other demons and other fallen angels that are in the room that are going to be poking and prodding at things to get your distraction off of what you're doing, because they don't want you setting people free.
No.
So there's going to be other things that are happening that will come in the situation, and they'll poke and prod other people to make it so distracting that you won't finish what you're doing. That you won't focus on what you're doing. And I think that's one of the reasons why Yahoshua put people out of the room, is to get rid of the distractions. not because he didn't know that he could do it, but to keep the distractions away so that he could focus just on the one thing that needed to be done, and his disciples that he took with him could focus on the one thing that needed to be done, and they could see how to do this as they went forward. Because they took those examples when they went to go do it themselves after Yahoshua rose from the dead. Even when he sent them out 2 by 2 before that, they had to use those examples that he showed them of how they were going to do the same thing. And so then when the demons are manifesting in the girl that in this woman that he's trying to set free, now all he has to do is focus on that. He doesn't have to focus on everything else in the room. And then the other thing Lester Sumrall showed us is his persistence.
He had a commitment. He had a commitment to do it. And the first time I administered deliverance, I didn't have that commitment. I was going to go home that night. So, after being mocked for a few minutes, we called it a night.
Right.
How many people have done that? Where they go in ready to cast it out, but they don't have the commitment to stay there all night long, or to the next day, or the commitment to stay there until that demon is completely gone, however long it takes.
And that's such a valuable point.
Yeah, and it brings back a story you told me earlier about training horses.
Yeah, and that's why I was telling Eric. I said it really makes me think about that, because demons are emotional. They play with our emotions. They play with the unseen things, and horses are very sensitive to our emotions. And when you want to get something done, if you come into the situation relaxed, calm, feeling like you got all day to get this done, it'll take you 5 minutes to get it done with that horse. He'll pay attention to you, he'll listen to you, he'll do anything you ask him to do. But if you go into the situation thinking, I got 5 minutes to get this done, so you need to shape up and pay attention and be on target, right? It will then take you all day to get it done.
Yeah, I've been in that situation before.
And it's the same. Sure. It's the same way with the demons. Is your approach to them is going to affect the situation. So if you think that this is going to take forever, it really is going to take forever. If you come in with this hurried approach of, well, I'm just going to come in for 5 minutes, we'll kick out the demons, and then I've got 20 other things on my list that I got to do today, those demons are going to know your list.
Yeah, they know that you're anxious, and they know that you want to leave, and they know that they just need to wait it out a little bit, distract you enough, maybe get you talking, maybe mock you, maybe do some other things to get you distracted enough where you're off focus. Mm-hmm. And then they can stick around.
And then you do a little bit of ministration, and they wait you out, and you leave, and then they come back full force to do what they were doing to that person before.
Yeah.
And that was a good takeaway for us, is to remind us that when you go into a situation, you got to go in with this determination of, this is getting done no matter what. Yep. Even if I have to rearrange my entire schedule, yep, I don't care. I'm not leaving until the demon leaves.
Yep.
Because the demon doesn't get to stay in this person, because the person is a child of Yahweh.
And when you have that level of commitment, Yahweh will walk you through the steps of how to do it.
Right.
While you're doing it.
Right. That's a great point, right?
Yes. And that's what he did with Lester Sumrall. Lester Sumrall said, all right, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm going to go take a break and fast and pray. Try to get more answers from Yahweh, and then come back and do it. He was not going to just leave and not complete it. And
the second day was a lot faster.
Yeah.
Because you can see from the story, the second day was a lot faster because he understood what was happening.
Yeah.
Because he was listening, because Lester Sumrall was actually listening to Yahweh now and paying attention. And so showing his authority and calling Yahweh into the situation, and not just trying to do this on his own accord.
Yep.
And you see that because of the different interactions that were happening. And then he learned things while he was going along, because he didn't know he had to get the person saved. because he kicked the demon out. And then a few minutes later, the demon comes back and tries to bite her, and she starts screaming again. And she can see the demons, but nobody else can see them. And so he asks her, he tells the demon to go, and he asks her, well, what's happening? Why did the demon come back? And the demon says through her voice that she wants me there, what was the first one? I have a right to be there because she doesn't belong to that God you're talking about. And so he kicks the demon out again, and then he leads her through a salvation prayer so that she will accept Yahshua into her heart. And when she accepts Yahshua into her heart, then she now has a right to kick out the demons herself as well, right? And so then a few minutes go by, and then the demon comes back again. And he asks the demon, well, how come you're here? I told you to go. And the demon says, but she wants me here. She didn't tell me I had to leave. You told me I had to leave. But she didn't tell me I had to leave. And so he throws the demon out again. And then he teaches her how to kick the demon out. He tells her, well, look, the demon's going to come back again once I leave, because this is how they pester you, right? But now you have the authority in yourself to tell that demon to go. And you know it has to go because you just saw it happen. So when it comes again, you tell it to leave. And so while the demon was still there, before he did all the teaching on that, he told her, he said, you tell it to leave. You tell it you don't want it there anymore. And you don't agree with it. And then the demon left. So we individually have to come out of agreement with the demons. We have to decide we don't want the demons in our life. And then we have to take our own authority to keep them out.
Yeah.
Once you've gotten yourself into Yahshua. Because you have to get saved first. You can't use the work of the deliverer without the deliverer in you.
That's true.
You have to get him in you. Because it's the power of the Ruach Hakodesh that is throwing out the demons. But you only get the power of the Ruach Hakodesh when you get the Yahoshua in you. Because you have to accept the work that he did for you to cover you, to wash away your sins and take them away from you. You have to accept his work first as your starting point. And that word salvation really means deliverance. And so how are you going to get deliverance if you haven't first accepted the deliverer?
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen, right? And so he showed us, so Lester Sumrall showed us some really good points for us to remember, that when we're in these situations where demons are manifesting, we have to, one, have a relationship, right? We have to have Yahoshua in us, have the relationship, get rid of your sacred cows, renew your mind to the word, right? All those things we talked about before. You've got to put in some effort. And then two, when you're confronted with the demon, you tell the demon very simply, get out. This does not have to be this long dissertation. You are not teaching the demon. You are throwing it out. So tell it, get out. And that's what he even said in his book. Very simply, he said, you wicked, evil thing, get out of her. Or come out of her. I'm sorry. He used the word come. Come out of her. And repeat that same sentence over and over. That's point number 3, is you stay there until it's done. And you repeat the same sentence over and over and over and over and over again until the demon finally leaves.
Yeah, because anything else, if you're having a conversation with him, asking his name, that's all just a distraction to give him more time to remain.
It is. It's a total distraction, and it's affecting your ability in your own mind to keep straight on the task at hand.
That's right.
Right? Because the task at hand is, I have the authority, I have the power within me, I have the backing of Yahweh himself, all the forces of heaven are at my back to cast out this demon. So just focus on that one thing, is, you evil wicked thing, come out in the name of Yahoshua HaMashiach. How dare you? Whatever your sentence is, you repeat that one sentence over and over.
That's right.
And then the demons will leave. And you stay there until it's done. And like, that's the persistence we see in all the ministers that we've listened to that have talked about how they rose somebody from the dead. The biggest thing I hear in their story is the persistence. Like Curry Blake's story of how he rose his second daughter from the dead is a really, really good example to me, is because when she fell out the window, he picked her up and he didn't acknowledge her death at all. He didn't say anything about her dying, even though he knew from a natural sense she was dead. But he picked her up and he said, "You shall live and not die." And that is the only sentence he said for 45 minutes. He said, "You shall live and not die."
And that's the persistence it takes sometimes.
Yes.
To say what the truth, which is what Yahweh would believe about the situation, or Yahweh knows about the situation, and not say anything other than that until it is done.
Until it's finished. Yep. Because it is already finished. We're just pulling the finished into our reality. And the only other thing Curry Blake did in that story when he tells that testimony is when he brought his daughter into the house and he leaned her against the wall, his family came down and started causing a commotion and getting all emotional about the death of this girl. And the only thing he said to them is, he said, "Shut up. If you can't believe, get out." And that was him taking authority over the distractions that were coming to prevent him from raising her from the dead.
Yeah.
And if he hadn't stopped that, if he'd allowed that to continue, it would have eventually distracted his own mind from being able to raise her from the dead.
Yeah.
Because you have to stay focused in a situation. And I think about that also.
That's exactly what Yahshua did when he was raised that girl from the dead. He told the mourners to get out.
Exactly, right? And then he grabbed a hold of her hand and he said, awake? What was the word he used? He called her back. The way the Strong's is written is that he said her name and he called her back to her body. And it says the breath returned to her. It's as if he was saying, as if he was saying to the young girl, return to your body.
Yep.
And I have to go back and look at the Strong's word to see what the actual translation of the word was that he used. But the context of it meant to return to your body. And but so it was really simple, right? He took authority over the situation and he woke her up as if she was sleeping. And he knew that she was dead from a natural perspective.
Yeah.
Right? But nothing is really dead. The breath has just left it.
Well, we're all eternal beings, so we can't
no
die.
death. Right.
We just move from one realm to another.
Exactly. So you can put the breath back in the being. And if we have all authority because we have Yahoshua in us, then we have the ability to put the breath back in. And that's what Yahshua said when he had risen from the dead in Matthew 28:18. He said, "I have now been given all authority in heaven and in earth." So all of the authority from the realm of Yahweh and all of the authority in the realm of this earth that we know in our orderly arrangement, he had all that authority. And then in verse 19 he says, "Now you go and do what I did." So he gave that authority to the disciples and told them, go do what I've been doing. Go work my mission, and I'm going to go with you, and I'm going to help you do it. And there's so many scriptures that support that. That's not just one. There are so many scriptures that talk about how he gave us that authority to go do it. And it specifically uses the word authority and not power. Because the power is the Ruach Hakodesh. The authority is what Yahoshua gave us. So we have the authority to use that power. And as the highest authority in a situation, you have the ability to tell people what to do and they have to listen. You have the ability to tell things around you to do something and it has to happen. It's that same concept. Just think about like work environments, right? When you're the big boss, everybody listens to you. They may not like it. They may grumble and whine and complain and talk behind your back, but they do what you tell them to do. Because they know there's a consequence if they don't.
Yeah, there is.
Right? I mean, and I had times when I was working, I was the big boss, and there were times when push came to shove and it came down to, well, your decision or mine. And there were many times where I said to somebody, well, considering I'm the one who signs your appraisal, you might want to do what I said. Right? Like,
yeah.
The buck stops here. At the end of the day, it's my responsibility. If I'm wrong, it's my responsibility. I'm the one who has to deal with the consequences of this. So as a subordinate, you listen and you do what your boss tells you to do, right?
Yeah.
Well, if your boss is Yahweh and he said go kick out the demons, then we have a responsibility to go kick out the demons and set the oppressed free.
That's so true.
And that was what Yahoshua was doing when he was walking around as man, is doing what his father sent him on a mission to do, is go set the oppressed free. Go kick out the demons. That's how we get rid of the oppression of the devil, is by kicking out the demons. So, this ended up being a little longer than I was thinking it would be, but I hope you all took some good takeaways from this, and you got our 3 really important points. Is 1, relationship with the right Yeshua, and right Yahoshua, Yeshua, Yahweh, Ruach Hakodesh, right? Renew your mind to who they are. 2, command the demon to get out. Simply repeat. Don't make it a dissertation. Just command the demon to get out. And 3, repeat until it's done. So we love you, and shalom, and go kick out the demons and get rid of the zombies and bring people back into their bodies where they belong.